All right, day one. We're going to talk about using the area model and talking about polynomials with respect to multiplication and division. And we're going to talk about how to factor polynomials using various methods. So factoring using the area model. What patterns do you notice? Well, do you see that this factor is here and this factor is here, kind of like the multiplication table you had in past arithmetic classes. So x times x is x squared. That's the first thing you notice. And then x times negative 3 is negative 3x. That's the second thing you notice. Then to make this red circled 2x, this red oblong has to make a 2x. We already have this negative 3x, so if I put a 5x here for step 3, add them together, I'll make my 2x. And then we notice this 5x fits the 5 times x, and then once we have this 5, we can do 5 times negative 3 and get negative 15, and sure enough, that's the last term. This example also gives us the numbers filled in. Let's try the one over here where there are some blanks. True, they're already filled in, but let's see the order that we came up with. So first of all, this x minus 2, we know that goes down here. And we know that this x to the third must go in this first position. That's the second thing we fill in. To make the x to the third, we have to multiply x times x squared. That's where the x squared comes in. That's a third thing we fill in. And then once we have the x squared, we have the negative 2 here already. Multiply those two, and we get the negative 2x squared. So that's the fourth thing we fill in. To make this negative x squared in this red oblong, I already have this negative 2x squared, so I need this positive 1x squared to make this negative x squared. So that's the fifth thing we fill in. This x times x makes our x squared that we just came up with, so that's the sixth thing we fill in. Once we have this x, and we already have this negative 2x from before, multiply those two, and we get negative 2x. That's the seventh thing we fill in. To make the negative 4x in this green oblong, I already have the negative 2x. I need another negative 2x. So that's the eighth thing I'm going to fill in. Well, to make this negative 2x, I need a negative 2 here, times this x to make our negative 2x. So that's the ninth thing we fill in. And once I have the negative 2 here, times the negative 2 here, I get the 4, which we knew was coming, but that would be the 10th thing we could fill in. We saw a couple of examples already with the area model, so let's just keep on going. So we want to factor this. We try grouping, but these two groups don't really get us anywhere. It's not working. Typically, with a third degree polynomial, we expect 3 factors. X times x times x gives us x cubed. But sometimes we only get one factor, and the second degree polynomial that's left cannot be factored. So she could be right, but in this case, we're probably thinking she's not. And so we probably have this situation in mind. Now, if x minus 1 is a factor, and I have something else that follows, whatever that is. If I plug in x equals 1, well, 1 minus 1 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0. So that if x minus 1 is a factor, then 1 should plug in and give us 0. So the good news for these is they're going to ask us to factor using the area model, but they're going to give us one of the factors instead of having us look for everything. So the x minus 1 goes here as our divisor. Clearly, x squared times x gives us our x cubed. That's our first term. It was already here, but I'll put a 1 here anyway. And then if I multiply the x squared times the negative x, we get the negative x squared. That's the second thing I notice. Now this red oblong is going to have both x squared terms in it. I already have this negative x squared. To make the 5x squared, I need a 6x squared. So that's the third thing I'm going to fill in. Well, if I have an x here, and this is a 6x squared, this must have been 6x, the fourth thing I fill in. And then once I have the 6x times the negative 1, I get this negative 6x. That's the fifth thing I fill in. The green oblong is going to have x's. I need to make the 2x. I have negative 6x here. If I put 8x here, I'll make the negative 2x. So that's the sixth thing I fill in. To make this 8x from this x, I need the 8 here, the seventh thing I fill in. And then, just as a double check, I take this 8, multiply by the negative 1, and I get the negative 8, which is the last term. So then our original polynomial is equal to this first factor times the second factor that we found here, and that goes in this position. And then if we dig back to our algebra days, we can keep the x minus 1, and this factors to x times x, x squared, 2 times 4, 8, the 2x and the 4x give us our middle term of 6x. So here is the original polynomial. Here is the polynomial we're dividing by, and then the other polynomial is the quotient. So it's just like 12 divided by 3 is 4, or 12 is equal to 4 times 3, the other 3. So that 12 divided by 4 is 3. What we're dividing by, and the answer.